Welcome to the Real Estate Syndication Show. Whether you are a seasoned investor or building a new real estate business, this is the show for you. Whitney Sewell talks to top experts in the business. Our goal is to help you master real estate syndication. And now your host, Whitney Sewell.
This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today, our guest is Ryan Narus. Thanks for being on the show, Ryan.
Thanks for having me.
Ryan is a double graduate of Wake Forest University with an undergraduate in psychology and an MBA. Frustrated with the golden handcuffs of corporate America, Ryan set out to build a portfolio of mobile home parks. But here's the thing. He started with nothing, no money, no network, and no experience. And that's exactly where a lot of us have felt or are feeling right now. And probably a lot of the listeners can relate to that. But flash forward 5 years, and Ryan has purchased 15 mobile home parks spanning roughly 1,441 lots and is financially free, successfully escaping corporate America. Ryan, grateful to have you on the show. I know you and I met a while back, and so pleasure to just hear more about your story. I know the listeners want to know how you did this and want to just share with them how you became financially free and help them with some steps to get there as well. Because when you're starting with nothing, like your bio mentioned, it seems hopeless almost, right? It seems like there's just no way to get there, or where do we even turn? So, but welcome to the show. Give us a little more about who you are, maybe your focus right now. But I want to dive into just how you became financially free and help the listeners as well.
Sure. So, just to kind of start with the present. So, like you mentioned, I have been a part of 15 mobile home park transactions. I currently have 3 under contract and 2 verbal agreements to price. So, I should have several more under contract. It snowballs. It starts really slow. You question what you're doing over and over again. And if you have a very stubborn wife like I do, who I love very much, she will also be like, what are you doing? This is stupid and is not going to work. So it's, I just want to start where I'm at by anyone who isn't familiar with the mobile home park space, or anyone who's hearing my voice for the first time. I started like most of you. I mean, I had nothing. I had more student loan debt than cash. I bought the lie, Whitney. I bought the lie that the counselors in schools tell us growing up as a millennial. Oh, study really hard, and then you'll go to a great school. And then after you graduate from that great school, you'll get a great job, and you work really hard at that job. You'll get promoted, and then one day you'll retire on a beach. Well, here's how that actually looks. You miss out a lot of your childhood because you're stressed out trying to get good grades. You get into a good school. I went to Wake Forest University, good school. You rack up student loan debt, you graduate, the job market is not as great as you would think it is, even if you go to a pretty good school. I mean, this is what happens when you go to a good school and you go into a job interview. Wow, Wake Forest University, great, I don't care. That's the fact that it's like, oh, wow, cool, you went to a good school. Kind of check in that box. Let's see what else you can do for us. Oh, you're not going to work for next to nothing? Like, I'm not, okay, yeah. So, I mean, it's like, it's so frustrating. And then you finally find a job. And then you feel stuck in that job because you get married to a lifestyle, a middle-class lifestyle, and you get stuck in this job, trying to get promoted and impress your boss and politic your way up. And it's unfulfilling. And
you're in that hamster wheel.
It's horrible. And I just, I ended up doing everything that I thought I was supposed to do, and I wasn't happy. And then I quit my job to chase my dreams. I more than halved my salary, lost 401k, lost benefits, literally moved into a double wide mobile home. And I lost 15 pounds by changing nothing about what I was doing. I was not working out. I was not eating any better. I just removed the depression from my life, which was working to make someone else rich in an unfulfilling job. So if you get nothing else out of this interview, it should be that once you find what you're meant to do, you will find that all of this like middle-class lifestyle that you think you're addicted to and can't let go of doesn't make you happy. And literally moving into like a mobile home will skyrocket your happiness. And you may even lose some weight.
That is awesome. No, I just, I love how, you just put it right out there because it's so true. I've seen it so many times, including myself, having the job that you think you're going to keep promoting, keep moving up. And then you finally realize, well, is that really what I want? Is that really what's best? But congratulations to you, Ryan, for just recognizing that and been taking that hard leap. And I'd like to just talk about that a little bit. I love focusing on that a little bit because I know there's so many listeners that are, wanting to do that same thing, thinking about that and the repercussions of that. Is it worth it? Can we do it? Do they have faith to make that happen just in themselves, in their ability? Maybe they're even their support. Like you're talking about, your spouse, maybe your spouse is not on board, that alone is such a good topic. Maybe you could speak to as well.
Sure.
But let's talk through that transition just a little bit. You quit, you moved into a mobile home park, and it was a great decision. Obviously, now looking back, right, that's easy to say. But speak to that transition a little bit, some difficulties there. I know you mentioned, your wife was questioning, this decision. How did you do that? How did you make that commitment? How did you work through some of those things?
So what I don't want to do right now, Whitney, is give you a highlight reel. I love watching ESPN's top 10, but the truth of the matter is there's so much omitted from that highlight reel that's really relevant to your audience. So if you don't mind, what I would like to actually start with is by going back to 2012. So in 2012, I had just hit, I was working for Honda, selling Hondas, and I had just hit their gold award, which is like the highest award you can get out of the gate. So that was after my first full fiscal year. So I sold like 240 cars, which is like 20 cars a month. I got this award, and I just remember going to Washington, D.C. to like be celebrated. Oh, look at you. Great. And it's like a pat on the back and then it's like, go do it again. And I just remember
but feeling do twice as much, right?
Oh my gosh. I just remember feeling so unfulfilled. Like it just was not worth it. And what I did was I went, it's time for a change. I was 24 years old, and I was like, it's time for a change. And so what I did was I just picked up any book I could read. I heard somewhere that the average American CEO reads 50 books a year. So I went, all right, book a week. We're going to do it. And I did exactly that. And it completely opened up my mind. I mean, Rich Dad, Poor Dad alone, if that was the only book I read that year, just completely, because my dad was the poor dad, even though he had a PhD in the works. And what I kind of realized through that, Tim Ferriss, 4-Hour Workweek, all of those, was that I needed to find who I was. So Stephen Covey, begin with the end in mind. And after spending quite literally hours and hours and hours reading, changing my mindset, I realized I needed to meet everyone I could possibly meet. And over the course of 3 years, so from 2012 to 2015, by the way, all the while I'm developing skills, how to negotiate, how to sell, how to persuade while I'm selling cars. Over the course of 3 years, I looked at over 100 businesses that I could possibly start. A lot of dead ends over the course of 3 years. I actually started a couple businesses that went nowhere. And then in the summer of 2015, I found mobile home parks. And then in the summer of 2017, I finally went full time. So it took me 3 years of a lot of reading, a lot of networking, a lot of soul searching. Then it took me 2 years, one of which to prove I could actually make money in mobile home parks, and another to actually plan to go full time. So when you're listening in and you're like, oh, well, like I really want to do this. I'm going to quit my job. Don't do that. Spend quite literally a year. You're going to feel so stuck, like you're getting nowhere. But if you just learn, network, and self-assess really, really hard. Find out what really makes you happy. So then that one moment where it's time to make a sacrifice, you are ready. So if you're hearing this, I really hope that what you're taking away is this took Ryan like 5+ years to get to the moment. And when you're at that moment, by the way, you prepare, like, let's use jumping off the diving board, because I'm afraid of heights. So it's a good example. Let's use jumping off the diving board as an example. You don't just walk up to a diving board and jump off, right? You got to know how to swim. You got to put on your suntan lotion if you're like me and you burn really easily. You got to have your swimsuit on, the works, right? It can't be adult swim. And And then when you get to the diving board, you got to have a plan, right? Like, okay, I'm going to jump here. I'm going to take a running start. I'm going to swim to this ladder here after I jump, right? So you have to have some kind of plan. And then you have the fear management piece. And to me, that was a really difficult thing going full time, because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to over half my salary. I'm going to take out recourse debt, by the way. So like everything I've ever worked for is gone if I fail here. And it was really scary thinking about that. But you know what happened, Whitney? You know what pushed me over the edge where I went, I don't care, is because I think I got to credit Stephen Covey's 7 Habits for this, or maybe it was Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek. One of the two basically puts this, or maybe it was Susan Jeffers' Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. Someone somewhere in a book I read was like, think about being 80 years old, thinking back on this moment. What are you going to say at 80, thinking back on this moment? And I said to myself, if I fail at, I was 29 years, was I 20? I had just turned 30. Okay. At 80 and 50 years, if I think back to how I failed epically at 30, would I be miserable on my deathbed thinking about that? Oh man, I wish I had stayed working for the big bank. Or would I go, you know what? I failed epically. I went bankrupt. I lost everything I had, but boy, did I have some courage back then. And at 80 years old, I think if I think back, at that moment, I was like, if I think back to this and I failed epically, I'm going to be so proud I took a chance and took a bet on myself. And not only that, in that same vein, I thought, because I didn't have kids at the time, I'm a father now, I went, you know what? I'm a big believer of do what I do, not just what I say, or whatever that cliche is. I said, what better lesson for my child than to say, you know what I did? I listened to my counselors growing up and the people around me, and they were wrong. Okay. I bought the lie. But instead of playing the victim card, going, oh man, you know what? Like I did all this and now I'm stuck in this. I said, you know what? I'm not going to play the victim. I'm going to go out and get what I want. And whether or not it worked is irrelevant, because I'm proud of myself for making that leap. I'm proud of myself from jumping off the diving board. And I just cannot think of a better lesson to teach my children beyond doing what I had done, having courage and going out there and doing it. And that I really hope, if you're listening in and you're at the precipice of going full time or wondering if you go full time and you're trying to get over that fear thing, I'll point you in 2 directions. Number one, what your 80-year-old self would say about you. And I bet your 80-year-old self is going to be really proud you had courage. And number 2, your kids. Because there's no better way to teach your kids to not have a spoiled or victim mindset than going, daddy felt the same way. And daddy found that what he had to do was take a bet on himself. And that's exactly what he did. And even though it didn't work out, that's the mindset you have to have. And guess what? If it works out, then even better. Now you're not stuck in corporate America anymore.
Some great advice, Ryan. Wow. I just love the story. Even just that line that you read, you mentioned, what are you going to say about this decision when you're 80 years old, or the decision you didn't make, or not making a decision is making a decision, right?
Yep.
Or deciding to stay in that rat race and decide to stay where you think you're comfortable and where everyone else, thinks you should stay as well. I had to make those same decisions. Very similar story of jumping out and committing everything ultimately, in the beginning to make it happen, or risking everything, right? But yeah, no doubt about it. Such good advice. What about the family support?
Sure.
During those hard times, what did that look like? How did you handle that through, making this big leap?
Yeah, my wife hated it. To put it bluntly, actually what ended up happening was, so imagine this, you spend years quite literally looking for the business that you want to start, because I knew I was meant to be a business owner. And you finally find it, and you get home to your wife and you're like, guess what? I know what I'm supposed to be when I grow up. And she's like, excuse me? In so many words, F you and F that. Imagine just having cold water thrown all over yourself. And now discovering that you have 2 battles. Number one, trying to get a company from scratch with no money, no network, and no experience off the ground. And number 2, trying to win your wife over in the process. it was really, really, really hard, especially because what I love about my wife is she has a lot of conviction and she's stubborn in the right way. So in other words, like I think Jeff Bezos said this, or someone famous said, I picked my wife because if I got locked in some jail in a third world country, she has so much conviction and fight in her, she would get me out. She'd find a way. And that's what I love about my wife, which is great when your incentives align. And when they don't, it's really tough. So she was very much so not a fan of this. So we had some really serious fights. And eventually I won her over. And believe it or not, she's actually going to go and buy her own mobile home park on her own. I am not invited, by the way. So it's come very full circle. And anyone who's listening in, if your significant other does not buy in, don't let that be a hurdle. Don't let you think that's going to be always. If you love each other, you'll find a way to make it work. And I invited my wife onto my podcast. Our second episode is literally called Spousal Buy-In. And I basically gave my wife 2 rules. I went, you have an open mic, 2 rules. Don't give away any of my secrets and no bad words. And she absolutely lights me up over the course of like 10 minutes. And then the last 5, it's a 15-minute episode. And in the last 5 minutes, we kind of have a great talk about marriage through the lens of entrepreneurship. So if you are feeling like you are fighting an uphill battle against your significant other, trying to win them over, that is an episode worth listening to, because it is so honest, and they will understand how my wife felt in that moment. And they will understand, like, it's like that whole feel, felt, found bit in sales, right? So like, you feel this way. My wife felt the same way, and she found a way to overcome that, and together, and actually coming out with our marriage being stronger than when it started. So if you're listening in, that's definitely something I'd point you to go listen to, my podcast episode with my wife. But just know, if you don't have time to go listen to that if you have a good marriage, it's like any other disagreement you have. If you love each other, love will find a way.
So important to have your spouse buy in, and like you said, it may not, most will probably not be buying in right away, especially like you said, when you've tried to start numerous businesses, that hasn't worked. And this just seems like another idea to them that's probably going to waste a lot of time and money and energy. But it's so important to have that support. I could not have done it without my wife's support. It was just an extreme, intense few years, and she was doing everything in the house. And so she had to be able to see that vision, and the kids too. I mean, it was a big sacrifice for everyone while dad's gone, pretty much, working 2 full-time jobs. So to make that happen. But I just appreciate you being real about that and sharing. I think the listeners need to hear that it's not all roses, that's for sure.
Right.
And takes just a ton of dedication before it starts snowballing, like you're talking about, or picking up now. We have 3 under contract, and other transactions potentially coming as well. That does not happen right away, but it does come. But you have to keep going. Ryan, what's been the hardest part of this real estate journey for you, or just the syndication business?
There's a lot of different ways I can go with this question, and I'll reiterate the highlight reel. It may sound awesome that we've closed on over 1,400 units and that we're going to be closer to 2,000 if we can close everything on our plate. It's going to sound really cool that I literally can sleep in and wake up, and the first thing in the morning that happens is my son looks at me and smiles and says, "Daddy," which is just, if you don't have kids, that like, I literally just want to give him my wallet and be like, whatever you want, dude. Whatever. I don't know what the limit is on this credit card, but you can have all of it. Like, being a dad is just absolutely the best thing in the world. And being able to not miss that, I think I read somewhere recently that 70% of the time you spend with your kids happens before they turn 18. And that really hits me in the feels, because I'm so grateful that I started this business, and I can work from home, and I can grow it if I want to, or stay doing what I'm doing if I want to, because I'm financially and time, I have both time and financial freedom. And so I can be there during that time for my son and for any other kids that I have. So it's worth it. But in terms of what is really difficult, I think the most difficult thing for me is, believe it or not, is finding what you truly love, because there's going to be a lot of sexy stuff that presents itself that is ultimately not worth your time. It's a lot like dating. You kind of have to go on a lot of dates to figure out what you like and what you don't like. A lot of times it's going to feel like you spend a lot of time on something and then it turns out not to be what you want. And then you sink into more of a depression, because I was pretty depressed in corporate America. I felt like I was stuck. I didn't want to get promoted. I didn't want to stay put, and I couldn't get demoted. I couldn't jump to another lily pad, so to speak, because I cut my pay. So, and I did switch jobs a few times and it just left me unfulfilled. And I think the truth of the matter is you have to pick something that you absolutely love, and you have to give yourself to the process of finding what you absolutely love, because it is so dang hard. It is. I mean, you're going to get sued. You're going to have to sue people. You're going to have people possibly threaten your life. Like I had someone threaten my life. You're going to have moments where you're like, I have no idea where I'm going to get the money. You're going to have moments where you're like, it's been 14 months and I haven't closed anything. You're going to have so many moments where you question everything you're doing. And if you don't truly love it at your core, you will quit. Do not delude yourself into thinking you're going to, oh, yeah, no, I like this, I'm going to find. No, you will quit. And a great person to look to who said literally exactly the same thing in so many words was Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs, it wasn't about the money for Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs, before he passed, quite literally said, you have to effing love it, because it's so hard. I mean, dude got fired from his own company that he created. I mean, can you imagine how difficult that must have been, how that felt? And he kept going and fought his way back, and then made it one of the best companies of all time. Like, how do you think he did that? You think, oh, he was smart and studied hard in school. No, it's because he loved it so much. So I've got to say that one of the most difficult things is quite literally just finding that. Like Jim Collins, Good to Great. You need to find the intersection of three things: something you love that you're passionate about, something you can be the best in the world at, right? Because you don't want to be a big fish in a big pond. A big pond. It's better to be a medium-sized fish and the biggest fish in a small pond. Very important. It messes with you psychologically. Something that's lucrative. You have to be able to make money.
No doubt.
If you can find the intersection of those three things, you will crush it.
Yeah.
And it is really, really hard to find that. Like I mentioned, it took me 3 years of intense reading and networking and soul searching to find that. And I even started a few businesses that went nowhere. So if you're listening in, I don't want you to be like, wow, this guy owns all these mobile home parks. No, I want you to go, wow, this guy spent quite literally years of his life fighting an uphill battle to finally find what he was meant to do. That makes me feel better, because I'm depressed and stuck at my job, and so is he. And he kept fighting until he found it, and so will I.
Awesome, Ryan. I love how you put it right out there, just like it was, and don't sugarcoat it. I don't find many like that. That I want the listeners to hear the truth, because I share a similar story. But a few questions before we run out of time, Ryan. So
Sure.
Just quickly, how do you prepare for a downturn?
Your systems have to be in place. You have to have good rapport with your customers and your employees. And cash is king. So I'll give you a great, for example, we did not distribute a penny until deep into Q3 of 2020. We did not distribute anything. We sat on cash. We even refinanced a property, so we had more cash on hand. I am very adamant about spending face-to-face time with my tenants. So even though we have a ton of properties, I still go to every single one. I spend as much time as I can. Obviously, it gets harder in scale, but the more in tune you are with your clients and what their needs are, and if you can work with them, the better. And the happier your employees, or at least the happier you can do your best to make sure they're happy and prepared for success, the better. But like they say in MBA school, cash is king. So in the event of a liquidity crisis, like we hit for a brief window or a potential serious downturn, having cash, money solves a lot of problems.
Ryan, what do you expect to happen in the real estate market over the next 6 to 12 months?
I expect a lot more activity, believe it or not. And I'll tell you why, because the interest rates are low and I just do not see those going up. And when those don't go up, you have a lot more buying power for syndicators like us and just real estate folks in general. I think what you're going to see in the retail realm is a continued beating. I think a lot of really smart, clever entrepreneurs are going to do some really cool things with retail space. So I'm excited to see that. I think luxury apartments are going to continue to kind of struggle a little bit. God bless anyone who owns a hotel right now. Yeah. But I think, I don't have a crystal ball. And I think that's what's fun about owning a business is you want to basically hedge your bets while continuing to get aggressive. So it's a nice balance there. But I've got to say, I am really excited to see all the clever people who are going to not only survive, but thrive through this crazy time.
What's a way, or how have you become so self-disciplined?
Well, my sensei from like back in high school would probably take credit for this. I got my black belt growing up, and because I was ADHD growing up, and I was all over the place, and doing martial arts really helped me not necessarily like be able to whoop someone's butt. Because if you ever met me, I'm a twig. I'm tall and skinny, and I'm like I got a runner's build. But having those martial arts helped discipline me. But that would probably be a great place I would point to. But I think the truth is, one of my friends who's a developer in the Virginia area, kind of close to you over in Richmond, he said, you cannot teach hunger. And I think the truth of the matter is for whatever, because I was talking to my dad recently and I thanked my dad. I was like, I want to thank you for, giving me the opportunity to grow up without alcoholism in the family or beating me or being an orphan or, you allowed me to go out and be successful. And my dad was like, don't thank me. He's like, I cannot take credit for you waking up one day and just having this fire in your eyes. And I cannot, whatever I have, I just have this passion that has always kind of been dormant until I found what I was meant to do. And so if you're listening in, I really hope that you too, like I said, you can't teach that. You just have it. And if you can just find what it is that's supposed to go to, it will explode in a huge conflagration. And it is so awesome. And I hope that if you're hearing this, like, again, you don't think I'm like some really smart guy or really talented guy. I'm just quite literally someone who is very passionate, who happened to find exactly what he was meant to do.
What's your best source right now for meeting new investors?
So believe it or not, I've just been so adamant about networking and being a giver. So my podcast, Mobile Home Parks in Real Life, stress the in real life portion. It's a lot of vegetables and no sugar at all. Just like I hope my vibe is coming off. And through that and my LinkedIn post and just general outreach, I had 7 speaking gigs at the SECO conference this year. And I mean, just through I've met thousands of people and I just try to give, because if you go and meet someone and they just give you like all sorts of value and you don't give them anything in return, like Stephen Covey says in his 7 Habits, you're depositing in the emotional bank account. And if you do that across enough before you withdraw anything, right? Before you ask anybody for something in return, you just deposit across like quite literally hundreds of people. Your name gets out there. And it's crazy now. Every time I open up my LinkedIn, I have a new message from someone I've never met before. And it just snowballs if you put effort into it. And to me, I found what's been extraordinarily successful beyond just having a podcast and having LinkedIn content for free and a YouTube channel is just going out of your way to meet people, even if you don't think they're ever going to do anything for you. And their word of mouth just spirals. So to condense that, be a giver and put effort into people and don't expect anything in return.
How do you like to give back? I know it's what you just talked about, but I always like to ask every guest, just tell us how you like to give back.
Any way I possibly can. So we started a partial college scholarship for our residents, for their kids, if they want to go to school.
What a good idea.
We wrote our first check this year in 2020, which is really exciting. For that, we do free food giveaways. We partner with local churches to do all sorts of fun stuff for our residents. How I give back to potential investors is I post all sorts of free content. I don't charge a penny for it, because what I want is would-be entrepreneurs who are frustrated and stuck on the sidelines, who would love to participate and get in the game that can't. I want them to hear my voice and know that they can do it too, because I had basically no money, no experience, and no network. I'm not some Ivy League grad with 10 years of real estate experience. I didn't even really know what a cap rate was when I started out. Seriously, it was very pathetic. I had nothing, and I want to encourage people. So I think the best way I know how to give back to others is just my time and my knowledge. So if you're listening to this and you're like, dude, this guy's like enthusiasm is infectious and he might have some words of wisdom, and I want to see if he's actually true to his word about giving back for free, literally just connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm serious. I absolutely love helping others in any way I can.
Ryan, I'm grateful to have met you and had you on the show, and just appreciate you just being real and laying it out there and just sharing your struggles, making this happen, and that those struggles are real. And I think majority of entrepreneurs that are successful experience those and had to push through and did, to reach success and didn't quit. And so just grateful hearing your story to, from nothing to financial freedom, 15 mobile home parks, and growing, like you mentioned. Tell the listeners again how they can get in touch with you and learn more about you.
Like my favorite rapper Tupac says, I ain't hard to find. We had to practice pronouncing my name before we started this. It's a true story. I believe I am the only Ryan Narus in the world. That's spelled Narus. That's N like nurse. And if you just quite literally Google me, I think the first thing that shows up is my LinkedIn. I'm a wide open door. I don't care who you are. You could be unemployed. You can be the CEO of a major company. I don't care. Anywhere in between. I am happy to help you in any way I can. I'm happy to connect you with folks, give you advice, whatever you want. My website should be one of the first things that comes up too. You can email me directly through my website. Again, I've got my podcast, Mobile Home Parks in Real Life. Even if you don't want to buy mobile home parks, there's still great stuff in there. Like the wife episode I told you about, starting with nothing, is literally details out how I had no money and I got started in the business. That is absolutely free. I have YouTube videos. You can connect with me there. Seriously, I mean this from the bottom of my heart. If I can help you, I do not expect a thing in return. And if you want to give me something in return, the best thing you can do is take my advice, go and kick butt with it, and tell me about it. That is like the number one compliment, is like, oh my gosh, Ryan, you told me to do this. I did it and it worked.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Syndication Show, brought to you by LifeBridge Capital. LifeBridge Capital works with investors nationwide to invest in real estate, while also donating 50% of its profits to assist parents who are committing to adoption. LifeBridge Capital, making a difference, one investor and one child at a time. Connect online at www.lifebridgecapital.com for free material and videos to further your success.